So the first step in order to actually install KnockKnock would be going online and finding the correct way to install it. So in order to do so, the first thing that you would need to do is go to this website, objective-c.org, and this should be the correct website to download it from. Now, like I said, I've never done this before, so I'm not exactly certain this is how to do it, but that's exactly what we're going to find out together. All right, so it looks like when you go to the site's tools, you can find KnockKnock under this tab. So let's click download and see what happens. All right, so I downloaded the zip file and KnockKnock should be installed, and now we can actually check it out. Yes, open. Welcome to KnockKnock. Malware often installs itself persistently, so it automatically runs each time your Mac starts. Okay, interesting. So let's see what's going to happen. All right, so it needs full disk access. All right, so KnockKnock should have full disk access now. I had to quit and reopen the app. All right, so it looks like we have gotten in. We have hacked the matrix so far. Okay, so I suppose we can just go ahead and start our first scan and see what happens. I'm not exactly sure what we're going to find here. I'm not sure if we're going to find anything at all, but I remember back in the day, I installed something called background music, which is essentially an application that allows you to control the volume of specific apps. So if one app is louder than the other, you can manually adjust it. Every time I went to my system audio, it always showed up under an output, as you can see up here. Now, I inevitably ended up finding it and deleting it, but it existed there for like 3 years straight, maybe 2 years. And I had no idea that that was something that I could remove. I thought that after I installed the app, that was just kind of baked into the code and there's nothing I could actually do about that. So the goal here is to find anything on my computer that is not supposed to be there, that is just running in the background, which is what I believe a background daemon actually is. Could be wrong, but let's see what happens. All right, so it looks like a background daemon is actually just a system level process that runs silently in the background without a graphical user interface. That could be a lot of different things, right? Exactly what I mentioned previously, an old app running in the background because it wasn't uninstalled correctly. There are a lot of things that can do this, and it's a very good idea to just check and see what's going on because these things can hog a lot of resources on your computer without you even realizing. So let's go ahead and see what's living on my MacBook rent-free. The scan has finally completed, and it looks like it found 63 persistent non-operating system items. So it looks like there are things actually running in the background. Now, this could always be the normal apps on your computer running as they're supposed to. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have malware or you have a daemon. What it means is that you have things basically running on your computer, which is why we go and investigate what's actually going on. As you can see, under background managed tasks, I have things like Al Dente, Better Display, Clean My Mac. These are all apps that actually live on my computer. These aren't things that you actually want to go and clean up or deal with because they're healthy and existing as they should be. But using this tool, hopefully we can uncover things that shouldn't be there. For example, we have this COM Docker socket. If you're anything like me and you enjoy doing a little vibe coding on occasion, you may have heard about something called Docker. I'm not a tech genius when it comes to this stuff, so I believe Docker is basically like a virtual computer that you can run things on, but I'm not certain about this. So it's kind of like a virtual machine, but not really. It basically allows you to control all of the dependencies for a software or a script or something that you're running on your computer so that it always works basically the same way. That's kind of what I'm understanding from this quick AI overview Google search. This right here is probably something that we should get rid of. Now, I'm pretty sure with KnockKnock, you can't actually uninstall or delete anything from this application. I believe it only shows you what exists on your computer. But after going through everything, it looks like for background managed tasks, the only one that we can actually get rid of is Docker, which is kind of ironic because this is one of the classic daemons that exists on your computer after you uninstall Docker. So let's do a little bit more investigating and see what else we can find here. Okay, well, I don't believe there's actually anything else in there that is worrisome or anything like that. Honestly, I think that the only thing we really need to do is maybe uninstall the Docker thing that is existing on my computer, because it looks like every time I actually log in, this Docker socket thing, whatever it is, launches. So this is definitely eating resources. I'm not sure how much, and I'm not sure if this is really going to do anything. But at least now moving forward, I have a way to identify what's actually going on my computer. All right, so I installed KnockKnock. I ran my first scan and I saved the scan as a file. So I want you to go through and check it out, see what's going on in the file, make sure there's no weird nonsense going on in there. And please check and look around for anything that we should actually clean up. Alrighty, let's add that a JSON file and see what Claude has to say about this. Alright, so it looks like Claude finished going through that file. And the verdict is, my MacBook is clean. It's clean, no weird nonsense going on. It's scanned against launch daemons, launch agents, login items, etc. Nothing weird is going on, which is phenomenal. But it looks like Claude also caught the Docker socket, whatever that is. It says hashes unknown, signature status error. Very interesting, okay. So that's very weird. So it's telling us that it couldn't read the file, because the file is gone. Docker, the app, was uninstalled at some point, but left behind a launch daemon. So every single time I boot up my MacBook, it tries to launch this thing that no longer exists. It fails silently forever, and it's not going to cause any damage, but it's just kind of existing for no reason. So Claude wants us to prove it by running these. So I suppose we'll do that now. So with the terminal open, we can just copy this message, drop it in there, hit enter, October 20th, 2025. It is currently July of 2026, so this was installed quite a while ago. The first command should say no such file or directory. I'm not seeing that, but regardless, let's exorcise this daemon. All we have to do is copy this message, drop it in there. It's asking for my password. I believe that is the password to my MacBook, if I'm not mistaken. Boot out failed. Input output error. I wonder what that means. Alright, so I ran the command to exorcise this daemon, and it said the following. So now we copy this message, drop it in here to Claude, and let's see what happens. Now, if you're anything like me, you probably also have no idea what any of this means, and that's okay. Because, you know, at the end of the day, I would have never been able to do this if tools like Claude didn't exist, which is honestly one of the best parts about having tools like AI, because you can do so many cool things these days. Okay, so we were expecting this message. I guess that makes sense. Okay, so the ghost was already dead. We just needed to remove the tombstone. I guess that makes sense. We'll run this command next. No such file or directory. Let's verify that it has been exorcised. If that comes back empty, the cleanup is done. Phenomenal. So we removed it. All is well. All right, so now what we can do is we can run another scan to see if Docker is still there. I'm assuming it's probably not, but let's just do a little double check anyways. All right, so the scan is complete, and let's just go through and quickly scan to see if anything is in there. Alrighty, so after doing a little investigation, it is 100% gone. We have successfully exorcised the daemon. Now, generally speaking, one of the biggest reasons why you may have background daemons in the first place is because when you uninstall an app on macOS, sometimes your Mac likes to keep old files for some reason. It doesn't do a clean uninstall. One of the ways that I've dealt with this throughout my history of using macOS is with an app called AppCleaner. This is a very cool app where you can drag and drop any applications in here and it'll remove all of the associated files with it. Now, sometimes this doesn't work amazingly. Sometimes it doesn't delete all of the files. Like for example, with Docker, I uninstalled Docker through AppCleaner, but it still didn't work very well. But it's the best you got, right? Because if you go into an app, it'll search through all of the associated files with it and remove all of them in one bang. Whereas if you wanted to delete an app, you just have to grab the application and drag it over to your trash. But all of this junk stays in there, stays on your device, and just running in the background. But since we're already on the path of technology hygiene, I suppose you could say, another app that is by the same company that made KnockKnock is called Task Explorer. This shows you all of the active processes running on your MacBook. So it looks like the first thing we have to do is authenticate Task Explorer, which makes sense. All we have to do is put in our password and then we have access. So as you can see, there are a lot of active tasks going on in the background. So this would be a good way to check and see what is actually going on your computer. You can see what is active, what is working, what is actually going on. Because I don't know about you, but I'm not actively going and checking to see what's running on my computer, because honestly, that would take way too long. No one's got the time for that. But with something like this, you can actually do that quite easily, because at the very bottom here, you have a little button where you can download all of your tasks. So if I download this, I can take that file and then once again upload it to Claude, have Claude do a little investigation and look and see if there's anything malicious or anything just running in the background that, well, shouldn't be, right? So in order to actually download the files to see what is running on my computer, I needed to run these two commands, and that allowed me to get the files that I can upload to Claude to see what's actually going on. So Claude ran through and looked at all of the system processes, and well, the Docker one is actually gone, which is great. Looks like there was 530 that Claude looked through, and every process is either macOS itself or an actual app that I have on my computer that I use. So based on all of the processes that are going on my computer right now, this is about as squeaky clean as you can possibly get, I hope.